The loudest statement you can ever make is often silence. In a world that screams for attention, where every opinion is broadcasted and every disagreement becomes a public battle, we are taught that to be heard, we must be loud. To prove our worth, we must argue, explain, and defend ourselves relentlessly. But what if this is wrong? What if the most powerful position you can take, especially against those who belittle, dismiss, or underestimate you, is not to engage at all? This isn't about weakness. It's not about surrender. This is about strategy. This is about the ancient and profound wisdom of Stoicism, repurposed for the modern age. The Stoics, from the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius to the playwright Seneca, understood that true power lies not in controlling others, but in mastering oneself. And the ultimate form of self-mastery is controlling your response, or more powerfully, your non-response. Those who underestimate you are setting a trap. They expect a reaction. They feed on your emotional turmoil. When you argue, you are playing their game by their rules. But when you choose silence, you don't just refuse to play, you flip the entire board. You take back the power they thought they had over you. In this video, we will explore 5 potent silent maneuvers rooted in Stoic philosophy. These are not passive-aggressive tricks. They are deliberate, dignified strategies that will not only silence those who doubt you, but will also fortify your inner citadel, leaving you stronger, calmer, and truly in control. Prepare to unlearn everything you've been taught about fighting back. Prepare to discover the art of silent power.
The first, and perhaps most unsettling maneuver for your detractors, is the withdrawal of access. Think of your time, your energy, and your emotional presence as a currency. For years, you may have given it away freely. You answered every text, you attended every gathering, you offered explanations for your choices, hoping to be understood, hoping to be validated. Those who underestimate you get used to this. They see your accessibility as a given, a resource they can tap into whenever they please, often to make themselves feel superior. The silent withdrawal is when you, without announcement or fanfare, close the bank. You stop replying instantly. You stop showing up to events where your presence is taken for granted. You stop explaining why you're making the choices you're making. You don't block them. You don't have a dramatic confrontation. You simply become unavailable. The psychological effect of this is profound. It triggers a phenomenon known as psychological reactance. When a person feels their freedom or control over a situation is being taken away, their brain rebels. They don't just feel loss, they feel an invisible insult. Why? Because your silence robs them of a narrative. If you fight, they can call you dramatic. If you cry, they can call you weak. But when you do nothing, what can they say? You haven't given them a role to play. You've walked off the stage, leaving them alone under the spotlight, and the silence is deafening. They are left grappling with a void where your reactions used to be. This void forces them to confront the one thing they were avoiding, their own behavior. Without your words to twist, they are left only with your absence. And your absence speaks volumes. It says, your opinion of me is no longer relevant enough to warrant a response. It says, I have moved on to matters more important than your validation. This is not immature ghosting. Ghosting is a fearful escape. The Stoic withdrawal is a calculated, dignified act of self-preservation. You realize your energy is finite and precious. You realize that explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you is a waste of that precious energy, so you pull back. You reinvest that energy into your work, your health, your true friendships. You create a vacuum in their life that was once filled by you, and it is in that vacuum that they will finally, truly, hear the echo of their own disrespect. The first question you must ask yourself is this: who in your life has access to you that they haven't earned? And what would happen if you silently, calmly, closed that door? The second maneuver is a form of revenge so pure, it is almost invisible. It is the unannounced ascent. When people underestimate you, they create a fixed, limited version of you in their minds. They box you in with their low expectations. The common reaction is to shout from the rooftops, I'll show you. I'll prove you wrong. You post your ambitions. You broadcast your hustle. You signal your every move. The Stoic approach is the opposite. It is to work in absolute silence. Imagine a submarine. It doesn't announce its departure. It doesn't broadcast its destination. It glides silently, powerfully, beneath the surface, navigating the depths. Then, one day, it emerges in a completely new ocean, on the other side of the world. Its mission accomplished. You become the submarine. You stop talking about your plans. You stop seeking their approval for your goals. You take that energy, the energy you would have spent convincing them, and you pour it, every last drop, into the work itself. You learn the skill, you build the business, you write the book, you master your craft, all while they assume you are exactly where they left you. This creates a powerful state of cognitive dissonance in them when they finally see your results. Cognitive dissonance is the mental discomfort experienced when holding two or more contradictory beliefs. Their old belief is, this person is mediocre, they won't amount to much. The new reality is you, standing before them, having achieved something they thought was impossible for you. Their brain scrambles to resolve this conflict. They might make excuses. Oh, they just got lucky. They must have had help. But these excuses are weak, and they know it, because you never gave them anything to attack. There was no arrogant announcement they could mock. There was no boastful journey they could criticize. There was only the silent, undeniable result. Your success is not the weapon. Your silence about your success is the weapon. It communicates that their opinion was so irrelevant to your process that you never even considered it. You weren't trying to prove them wrong. You were trying to prove yourself right. This ascent is not fueled by spite, but by a deep, internal drive. It's the difference between climbing a mountain to shout from the top, and climbing it for the profound peace of the view. The first is for them, the second is for you. They will see you move on to a better job, a healthier relationship, a more peaceful state of mind, and they won't have a story for it. They can't pinpoint the moment you beat them, because you were never competing. You were simply evolving. So, ask yourself, are you building your life as a performance for others, or as a sanctuary for yourself? Start moving like the submarine. Work in the deep, and let your emergence be the only statement you ever need to make. The third maneuver is subtle, yet it fundamentally alters the dynamic of any relationship. It is the emotional closing. Many of us are what you might call emotional caretakers. We are the friends who always listen, the colleagues who always soothe, the partners who absorb the anxieties of others. Those who underestimate us often exploit this trait. They use us as an emotional dumping ground, a 24/7 convenience store for their validation, complaints, and dramas. They take, but they rarely give. The emotional closing is not about becoming a cold, unfeeling person. It's about deciding your empathy is a precious resource, not an infinite public utility. You change your store hours. This happens quietly. When they come to you with their usual manufactured crisis, you no longer lean in with intense concern. You listen politely, but you do not absorb. You do not offer solutions. You do not become entangled in their emotional storm. You respond with simple, neutral phrases like, I see, or, that sounds difficult, or, I hope you figure it out. Your emotional well, which was once wide open for them to draw from, is now covered. They can still see the well, but they no longer have access to the water. This is deeply unsettling for an emotional manipulator. They are addicted to your emotional labor. Your empathy is the fuel for their sense of importance. When you stop providing it, their engine sputters. They might try to escalate, to provoke a reaction from you, any reaction. They might accuse you of being cold, or saying, you've changed. And the correct, silent response to this is to simply agree in your mind. Yes, you have changed. You have realized that your peace is more important than their comfort. You've stopped setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. In Stoic terms, this is about distinguishing what is in your control from what is not. Other people's emotions are not in your control. Your emotional investment, however, is entirely in your control. By becoming an observer of their drama rather than a participant, you reclaim that control. You remain a kind person. You are still there for those who reciprocate, for those who value your presence. But you are no longer a free service, for those who have only ever seen you as a utility. You are present, but you are no longer permeable. They will feel this shift not in your words, but in your energy. They will feel the boundary, even if they can't see it. And they will realize that the person they thought they could easily manipulate is gone, replaced by someone calm, centered, and emotionally self-possessed. They have lost their favorite emotional resource, and they have no one to blame but themselves. Consider this. Where in your life are you giving away your emotional energy for free? What would happen if you simply closed for business? The fourth maneuver is about building fences where there were once only suggestions. It is the practice of the unspoken boundary. We are often told to set boundaries by using clear, verbal statements. Please don't speak to me like that. I am not available at that time. And while this can be effective, for those who chronically underestimate you, words are often just seen as a negotiation tactic, a challenge to be overcome. The Stoic approach to boundaries is less about what you say, and more about what you do. It is about enforcing limits through consistent, silent action. Think of a river carving a path through a canyon. The river does not shout at the rock. It doesn't argue with the mountain. It simply flows, consistently, persistently. And over time, the landscape itself is forced to change around the river's unyielding path. Your actions are the river. If someone consistently makes cynical jokes at your expense, You don't say, "Stop it." The next time they do it, you simply offer no reaction. No fake laugh, no smile, just calm, neutral silence. Then you turn and change the subject or walk away. You have just, through action, defined the joke as unacceptable territory. If a colleague always dumps their urgent work on you, at the end of the day, you don't give a lecture on respect. You simply say, "I'm leaving for the day. I can look at this tomorrow," and then you leave. You don't make excuses. Your action, leaving, is the boundary. These actions are far more powerful than words because they cannot be argued with. They are a reality. When you enforce a boundary with action, you move the conversation from the theoretical, "You should respect my time," to the practical, "My time is over." Those who are used to crossing your lines will be confused at first. They will test the new boundary, again and again. They'll call late, hoping you'll pick up. They'll make the joke again, hoping for a nervous laugh. But when they are met with the same calm, consistent, silent action every single time, the message is received on a primal level. They learn that the fence is real, it is solid, and it is not up for debate. This is not aggressive, it is assertive in its purest form. Aggression is a loud attack. This is a quiet defense of your own space, your own time, your own sanity. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you stop, and what you reinforce. And the most powerful lessons are taught not through lectures, but through demonstration. Ask yourself, what is one boundary you can start enforcing today, not with a confrontation, but with a simple, silent, consistent action? The fifth and final maneuver is the most definitive. It is reserved for situations where the disrespect is persistent and unchanging. It is the dignified departure. This is not just withdrawing access. This is permanently removing yourself from the equation. It is the ultimate act of valuing yourself over the need for closure or a final victory. In toxic dynamics, we often crave a final scene, a dramatic confrontation where we finally say everything we've ever wanted to say. We want them to understand the pain they've caused. We want them to admit they were wrong. The Stoic understands that this desire is a trap, keeps you tethered to them, still seeking something, an apology, an admission, from a source that will never provide it. The dignified departure is realizing that the only closure you need is the one you give yourself. You leave, not with a bang, but with a quiet click of the closing door. You stop replying to the messages. You leave the group chat. You move on from the job. You end the relationship. And you do it without a final, scathing monologue. Why is this so powerful? Because it leaves them with nothing. No drama to feed on. No angry words to use against you. No final fight that they can reframe to make themselves the victim. They are left in a state of absolute narrative helplessness. Your silence, your complete and total absence, becomes a mirror. In that mirror, they can no longer see your overreactions or your flaws. They can only see themselves and the space where you used to be. They are forced to sit with the full, unvarnished consequences of their own actions. This is the highest form of what the Stoics called apatheia, not apathy, but a state of tranquility, free from disturbing passions. You have become so clear about your own worth that you no longer need the other person to participate in your liberation. You don't leave to punish them. You leave to save yourself. You leave because you realize that your future is more important than your history with them. You are not running away from a battle. You are calmly walking toward peace. They may never understand why you left. They may call you a coward for not facing them one last time. But in your heart, you know the truth. You are not too cowardly to stay and fight. You were simply too dignified to continue playing a game you had already won by choosing to leave. The final question is the most profound. Is there a game in your life that you don't need to win, but simply need to stop playing? The 5 maneuvers we've discussed, the withdrawal of access, the unannounced ascent, the emotional closing, the unspoken boundary, and the dignified departure, are not a toolkit for revenge. They are a blueprint for self-reclamation. The Stoic philosopher Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." This is the core of silent power. It is not about becoming like them, bitter, reactive, and loud. It is about becoming so radically different, so grounded in your own self-worth, that their negativity cannot find a foothold. Silence, in this context, is not emptiness. It is a space you create, a space to heal, to think, to build. It is the fertile ground from which your best self can grow, away from the noise of those who can only see what you were, and not what you are becoming. You do not need to win their respect. You only need to command your own. Stop trying to win the argument. Start winning your life, and do it in the most powerful, dignified way possible, in silence. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the art of silent power. If this resonated with you, subscribe to our channel for more wisdom on living a stronger, more intentional life. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Which of these maneuvers do you need to practice most? Until next time, stay calm, stay strong, There comes a moment after silence, when the noise of the world fades, but something deeper begins to speak. It's the sound of your own mind, a voice that's been waiting underneath all distractions, quietly whispering truths you were too busy to hear. Silence does not simply remove the world. It introduces you to yourself. For years, we thought the battle was out there, against people who misunderstood us, against time, fate, or circumstance. But once the world falls quiet, you discover the real struggle is within. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Greater than, nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions, than your own soul." Inside that quiet space, you meet the parts of yourself you used to outrun, the unresolved, the impatient, the proud, the wounded. And at first, it's uncomfortable, like staring into a mirror that reflects not your face, but your flaws. But the Stoic knows, what you refuse to see will always rule you. To look into yourself, without fear, without flinching, is the highest act of courage. Music Seneca Nake, Swasana Malila be emotional tapi tetap dalmai. You begin to see how much of your suffering was not caused by the world, but by the way you interpreted it. You realize how many battles you fought, just to prove something that no longer matters. Seneca once said, "Greater than, we suffer more in imagination than in reality." And now, in this quiet confrontation, you see that imagination clearly, the endless stories, the judgments, the expectations. You begin to let them go, one by one, like ashes carried by the wind. This is the mirror within, not a reflection of vanity, but of awakening. Every fear you face inside becomes a door, and every truth you accept becomes freedom. Music Melambat. Visual Imaginer, Sesiring Menatap Kaer Tening, Wania Tercherman Samar D Permukan. As the surface calms, you begin to see more than your reflection. You see the witness behind it, the awareness that has always been there, watching, patient, silent. Epictetus once said, "Greater than, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." But now you understand a deeper meaning. Sometimes, the truest reaction is no reaction at all. The mind is like water, disturbed by the winds of thought, but capable of stillness deeper than any ocean. And in that stillness, you remember who you truly are. Not the titles, not the wounds, not the person others said you should be, but the consciousness observing it all. Music Berhenti Perlahan, Meni Isakin Kehaningen Bebrapa Detik, Memberi Ruang Bagi Reflexi. In silence, the self returns to its origin. In stillness, the soul remembers its shape. And as you gaze into the mirror within, you no longer fear what you see. You begin to understand. Every person fights two battles, the one the world sees and the one no one ever will. The second one, the silent battle, is where true strength is forged. It is fought in moments when no one is watching, when the only witness is your own conscience. When temptation whispers, when fear tightens its grip, when despair tells you to stop, and yet, you keep going. This is not a battle for glory. There are no medals here, no applause, no recognition, only the quiet satisfaction of integrity, doing what is right, even when it costs you everything. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. Marcus Aurelius led armies, ruled an empire, but his greatest victories were invisible, won not on battlefields, but within the chambers of his own mind. He wrote, "Greater than, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Every time you resist anger, every time you forgive without needing to announce it, every time you choose discipline over comfort, you are fighting that silent war. It's not glamorous. No one cheers. But it is sacred, because in those moments, you are building something unshakable, character. Sometimes, you will lose this battle. You will break your own rules. You will fall back into old habits. But the Stoic does not drown in guilt. He observes, learns, and rises again. Epictetus taught, "Greater than, no great thing is created suddenly. Progress is invisible. Growth happens in silence. And those who underestimate you will never see the wars you've survived, because they were never fought in the open. They were fought in the quiet of your thoughts, in the decisions you made when no one was around. That is where the soul becomes steel. The silent battle shapes a different kind of warrior. One who doesn't need to shout victories, because peace itself is the trophy. One who doesn't need revenge, because understanding has replaced anger. One who doesn't crave validation, because he has already been witnessed by his own conscience." Seneca once said, "Greater than, he who conquers himself is the mightiest warrior." And now, you understand. The world will always test you. People will always underestimate you. But the loudest proof of your strength will always be the calm you maintain when chaos demands your reaction. Because the war was never about them. It was always about you, and the version of yourself that silence was guiding you toward. The world outside may still be loud, but inside, you have found your stillness. And in that stillness you have won. The greatest victories are the ones no one ever sees. Peace is not a gift. It is a discipline. It does not arrive when the world finally calms down. It begins the moment you decide to stay calm. While the world remains in chaos, most people chase peace like a mirage. They say, "I'll rest when things get better. I'll be calm when they stop attacking me. I'll be happy when I finally succeed." But the Stoics knew the truth. If peace depends on the world, it will never last. Peace begins when you master your own response. When you realize that every insult, every setback, every storm, is simply another invitation to practice your calm. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Greater than, you have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. It's easy to be peaceful in silence. It's easy to be kind when everyone agrees with you. But real discipline, the discipline of peace, is when you can stay centered even while everything around you falls apart. You breathe. You watch. You do not resist reality. You move with it. This is not surrender. This is mastery. To the untrained eye, you look passive. But inside, you are working harder than ever. Training your emotions, restraining your impulses, guiding your thoughts. This is inner athleticism, the training of the soul. Epictetus said, "Greater than, circumstances don't make the man, they only reveal him to himself." And now you see what he meant. The difficult people, the failures, the rejections, they were never obstacles. They were mirrors, showing you where your peace still depends on control. The discipline of peace is not about indifference. It's about clarity. It's knowing the difference between what deserves your reaction and what deserves your silence. Most will choose the first. The Stoic chooses the second. And with each choice, your peace becomes less fragile, less like glass, more like steel. Seneca once said, "Greater than, he who is brave, is free." Freedom, you realize, is not the absence of problems, but the absence of disturbance within. It's the ability to walk through conflict without letting it walk through you, to speak without shouting, to act without reacting, to love without needing to be loved back. That is peace. Not the peace the world promises, but the peace that cannot be taken away. This peace does not shout. It does not seek followers. It simply exists, quietly, powerfully, unshakably. And when you reach it, you will understand what the Stoics truly meant when they said, "Greater than, no man is free, who is not master of himself." The discipline of peace is the highest form of power. After the silence, after the stillness, after the storm within has settled, you return. But you are not the same. The world looks identical. The same streets, the same people, the same chaos. Yet somehow, everything feels quieter, because it is not the world that changed. It is you. You now carry something the world cannot easily touch. A stillness that doesn't depend on the noise around you. You no longer react to everything that demands attention. You choose where your energy flows, like a sculptor choosing where to place each deliberate strike. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Greater than, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be." Be one. You no longer need to prove yourself. You simply live your philosophy, calmly, quietly, powerfully. The people who once underestimated you will look again, and this time, they won't understand, because true transformation cannot be explained. It can only be felt. They will wonder how you became so composed, how your silence carries more gravity than their words. They will sense your boundaries, your peace, your quiet authority, and they will realize, perhaps too late, that your silence was not absence. It was evolution. You have become what the Stoics called eudaimon, a person living in harmony with nature, aligned with reason, and touched by the storms of others. Seneca wrote, "Greater than, a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Now you understand why you had to face every conflict, every doubt, every underestimation. They were the friction that shaped your clarity. They were the resistance that revealed your resilience. The return to the world is not a retreat from solitude. It is the merging of both worlds, the stillness within and the motion without. You speak less, but your words carry weight. You act slower, but your actions carry purpose. You feel deeply, but you are not ruled by feeling. This is what the Stoics called apatheia, not indifference, but mastery over emotion. Now, you walk through the same world that once tested you, but this time, you walk through it like a calm flame, steady, silent, unwavering. You no longer seek the applause of others. You no longer fear their judgment. You simply exist in alignment with the truth you discovered in silence. Epictetus said, "Greater than, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." You smile, because now you understand, wisdom never announces itself loudly. It moves quietly through life, changing everything it touches, without ever needing to explain. And so, you return, not as who you were, but as who you were meant to become. You've learned the greatest lesson of all, that true strength is calm, that true power is silent, and that the deepest peace is not found by escaping the world, but by walking through it, untouched. This is the art of silent power. Time is the one thing we all possess equally, and yet, it is the one thing we spend as if we will never run out. We chase comfort. We chase approval. We chase everything except awareness. But time never stops chasing us. The Stoics saw time differently. They didn't see it as something to waste or fear. They saw it as a sacred fire. Seneca wrote, "Greater than, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Each second that passes is a teacher, a quiet whisper reminding us, you will not be here forever." To most, this is terrifying. But to the Stoic, it is liberation. Because when you truly understand that your time is limited, you stop wasting it on what doesn't matter. You stop defending your ego. You stop replaying insults in your mind. You stop explaining yourself to those who will never understand. You start living. We often say, "I'll start tomorrow. I'll change later." But time doesn't wait for your decision. It moves, quietly and endlessly. And every moment you hesitate, another piece of your life slips away, not stolen by others, but surrendered by your own inattention. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Greater than, you could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do, say, and think. The Stoic doesn't fear death. He fears living without purpose. He fears spending his hours in bitterness, his days in distraction, his years in the service of things that don't matter. Time is the silent measure of everything. It humbles kings and emperors, erases monuments, and swallows the names of the proud. But to those who walk in awareness, time becomes not an enemy, but a friend. Because when you see the limits of time clearly, you see the infinite value of this moment. You begin to slow down. You begin to breathe deeper. You begin to listen more than you speak. You stop needing to rush through life as if the destination matters more than the journey. You stop competing with others for validation that fades as quickly as the applause. The Stoic does not count years, he counts clarity. He measures a good life not in length, but in depth. Seneca once said, "Greater than, life is long, if you know how to use it." And to use it well is to remember, constantly, that every sunrise is a gift you were never promised. Imagine for a moment that today was your last. Would you still scroll endlessly? Would you still argue to be right? Would you still chase the attention of people whose names you'll forget in a year? Or would you look at the sky and realize how beautiful it has always been? Would you thank those who hurt you for teaching you detachment? Would you forgive yourself for wasting time on battles that didn't matter? This is not morbidity, it's awakening. Because death awareness is not about despair. It is about intensity. It gives life its sharpness, its clarity, its meaning. You begin to live not in fear of the end, but in gratitude for the chance to begin again, right now, in this very breath. Time is not the enemy. It is the reminder. It is the silent mentor saying, "Do not waste me. I will not return." And when you listen, truly listen, you realize that silence is not empty. It is full of the ticking of eternity. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his final years, "Greater than, when you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive. To breathe, to think, to love, to act. So breathe deeply, think clearly, love quietly, act with intention." That is how you honor time, not by controlling it, but by walking alongside it, with awareness and grace. The weight of time is not a burden. It is the hand that reminds you to live fully, and to live well. In the ancient world, the Stoics walked through marble halls. They spoke in courtyards and temples. Their silence echoed against stone. Today, our temples glow from glass screens. Our halls are crowded timelines, and our silence has become rare. We live in a world louder than ever, not in sound, but in noise. Notifications, opinions, comparisons. We wake up not to sunrise, but to screens. Our minds are constantly fed, yet our souls are starving. We scroll endlessly, searching for meaning, for connection, for validation. But the more we search outside, the further we drift from within. Epictetus once said, "Greater than, no man is free who is not master of himself." But how do you master yourself when every second, someone or something is demanding your attention? The modern Stoic lives not in ancient Rome, but in a digital empire. And his battles are invisible, not against swords or tyrants, but against distraction, against anxiety, against the endless hunger for more. We measure our worth in numbers, our happiness in likes, and our confidence in comparison. But every time we compare, we forget, no one can live your life but you. Marcus Aurelius faced chaos too. He ruled an empire consumed by war and plague, and yet, he wrote quietly to himself, "Greater than, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Even he needed reminders. He too felt the noise of the world, and chose stillness. So what does stillness look like today? It's the moment you stop reacting, the second you choose to listen instead of argue, the breath you take before replying to hate with hate, It's when you decide to be, not to perform. In a world that rewards noise, stillness becomes rebellion. In a culture obsessed with being seen, silence becomes power. The Stoic doesn't withdraw from life, he engages deeply, but without attachment. He works, he loves, he fails, he rises, and through it all, he remains grounded. Because peace is not found in absence of problems, but in presence of purpose. There's a moment in every Stoic's journey, when you stop asking, why me, and start saying, because me. Because I was meant to face this. Because I was meant to learn strength. Because I was meant to remember that peace is a choice, not a gift. The world will never be quiet, but you can be. The noise will never end, but your response can. This is the paradox of the modern Stoic. He lives in the storm, and yet, he becomes the calm. Epictetus taught, greater than, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. So react with wisdom, speak with intention, act with courage, and most of all, remain silent long enough to hear your own soul again. The ancient world needed warriors of virtue. Today, the world needs warriors of silence. People who choose clarity over chaos, presence over performance, discipline over distraction. They are the new Stoics, not bound by togas, but by truth, not by temples, but by time. And when the world grows louder, they simply return to the stillness within. In the end, the greatest revolution is to remain calm. There is a silence that begins where fear ends, a quiet that lives not in the absence of danger, but in the acceptance of it. We fear because we want to hold on to life, to love, to certainty. But the Stoics, they learn to let go, not in despair, but in clarity. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." The emperor did not whisper this as a ruler, but as a man who knew his time was slipping away. Each sunrise was one less he would ever see again, and yet, he smiled. Because when the mind makes peace with impermanence, fear loses its teeth. The storms, the endings, the moments of grief, they no longer destroy you. They remind you that you were alive enough to feel. You see, fear feeds on tomorrow. It grows in the shadow of, what if? But peace lives only in the breath that's now. When Seneca said, he suffers more than necessary, who suffers before it is necessary, he wasn't dismissing pain, he was teaching presence. To live 1 second fully is greater than imagining 10,000 futures. Close your eyes. Feel the fear that trembles within your chest. Do not fight it. Watch it. Observe it like a wave that rises and falls. Every fear has a rhythm, and if you stay long enough, you will hear it fade into stillness. There, in the quiet after panic, you will meet your true self. Not the one who seeks safety, but the one who stands unshaken. Epictetus said, when you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself, and study your own failings. What he meant was this: the world's noise is not your enemy, your reaction is. Fear is not out there. It begins within, and it can end there too. Every beat of your heart is a countdown, not a curse, but a reminder that time is a privilege, not a guarantee. When you look into that truth, you stop clinging. You begin to live. So, stand still in the storm. Let the winds move through you. Let the noise dissolve. Because beyond fear, there is something sacred. A silence so deep it sounds like eternity breathing. And when that silence finds you, you will understand what the Stoics meant all along, that peace was never about the absence of pain. It was about the mastery of the self. In the end, every storm fades. Every voice, every thought, every wound returns to silence. And it is there, in that silence, where wisdom waits. All your life, you have chased meaning, in love, in ambition, in the applause of others. But what if meaning was never out there? What if it was always within, quietly watching you search for it? Marcus Aurelius wrote, nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. The emperor had seen empires rise and fall, and yet, the greatest kingdom he ever ruled was the stillness inside his heart. The Stoics never promised a painless life. They promised clarity, a life lived in alignment with nature, with reason, and with truth. To live as a Stoic is not to escape pain, but to transform it into peace. When Seneca wrote, no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. He revealed the paradox of strength. You only know peace once you have met the storm. So, take one last look at the world. See its chaos, its beauty, its noise, and smile. Because you now understand, everything is fleeting, and that's what makes it sacred. Every sunrise you witness, every goodbye you whisper, every heartbeat that echoes through your chest, they are not just moments. They are proofs of your existence. And existence itself is the rarest miracle of all. Let go of the need to control. Let go of the need to know. The river of time carries all, the lost, the loved, the forgotten, and yet, it keeps flowing. You are not separate from it. You are the river. And when you realize this, you no longer fear the end, because there is no end, only transformation. Epictetus once said, "What upsets people is not things themselves, but their judgments about these things." Your mind can turn storms into serenity, loss into understanding, and endings into beginnings. That is the final Stoic art, to see the world not as it should be, but as it is, and still love it deeply. So breathe, not to escape the noise, but to remember your rhythm. Stand tall, not to resist the world, but to move with it, gracefully. Smile, because you have learned, what few ever do, that calm is not a place you find, but a state you become. And when the day comes, that the world falls silent around you, you will not be afraid. You will simply return to the stillness that has always known your name. After the silence, life continues. The sun still rises. The city still hums with motion. People still chase, cry, laugh, and hope, as they always have. But something inside you has changed. You no longer rush with the crowd. You walk with awareness, each step grounded, each breath sacred. You have seen the storm within and survived it. You have heard the noise of the world and chosen peace instead. You do not speak as often now, not because you have nothing to say, but because words no longer need to fight for meaning. Life after awakening is not louder. It is quieter, simpler, but infinitely deeper. You start to see beauty where it was once invisible, in the dust floating through sunlight, in the brief exchange of smiles with a stranger, in the way rain slides down a window and disappears. This is not ignorance. It is clarity. For the first time, you no longer need to prove that you are alive. You simply are. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." Those words, once distant, now pulse with truth in your chest. You understand now that the goal was never perfection. It was presence. It was to meet each moment as it arrives, without judgment, without fear, without needing it to be different. You no longer resist the flow of life. You flow with it. Like the tide, you rise, you fall, and you return. And even when pain comes again, because it will, you do not collapse. You breathe, and remember, you have been here before. The silence within you knows the way back. The world will test you again. There will be losses, noise, distraction, but you will not lose yourself in them anymore. You have seen what lies beneath the surface, and it cannot be taken away. For peace is not fragile. It is the foundation beneath all things. Even in chaos, it endures. Even in grief, it hums quietly, like a star that never dies, only hides behind clouds. And so, you live, not as the person you once were, but as something steadier, wiser, quieter. You carry no flag, no certainty, no need to convince. You carry only awareness, and that is enough. The world may not notice your transformation, but that's all right. The Stoics never sought recognition. They sought understanding. They sought peace. They sought truth. And now, you have found all three. In the end, you become what you practiced, a calm soul in a restless world, a flame that burns without smoke, a witness of the eternal. You are not chasing silence anymore. You are the silence. There comes a moment, after all the noise, after all the battles within, when silence is no longer a weapon, but a companion. You no longer seek to prove, to defend, or even to understand. You simply are. The Stoics believed that life was a brief loan from nature. We come from dust, we walk through time, and we return to the same dust that once gave us form. Yet in between, there is a spark, a consciousness, a voice, a chance to live with virtue. Epictetus once said, "What is death? Nothing more than the separation of soul and body. But if the body does not harm the soul, why should the soul fear it?" The modern world hides from this truth. We are trained to distract ourselves, to fill the silence with endless noise, so we don't have to face the inevitable. But the Stoic looks at death not with terror, but with recognition, because he has died many times before. Every time he let go of anger, of pride, of illusions. Every time he surrendered to silence. True immortality does not come from being remembered. It comes from being at peace before you go. When your thoughts, your actions, and your words align with nature's rhythm, when you harm no one, envy no one, and seek only truth, then even if your name fades, your essence echoes, like ripples on water that continue long after the stone has sunk. Think about it. Marcus Aurelius' bones have long turned to dust. Seneca's words were almost burned by emperors, who feared his wisdom. Epictetus, born a slave, left behind no monument, no tomb. And yet, their voices still reach us, not as ghosts, but as reminders that truth does not die. Each of them lived by a simple law: live according to nature. They didn't mean the forest or the stars, though those are sacred too. They meant our inner nature, the calm observer within, the one that watches thoughts rise and fall like clouds and does not cling to them. That, they believed, was the divine part of us. When you learn to act from that place of stillness, every gesture becomes eternal. Every kindness, every moment of courage, every choice to remain calm when others rage, these are echoes that time cannot erase. One day, your voice too will fall silent. Your name, your possessions, your digital footprints, all will vanish into the wind. But your energy, your virtue, your wisdom, they will remain in the unseen architecture of the world. You are not a fleeting noise in the chaos. You are part of the pattern that never ends. So when you next stand beneath the sky, remember this: every breath you take is borrowed from eternity. Every act of patience, every moment of compassion, every silent victory over the self, it all returns to that great rhythm of existence. Seneca wrote, "As is a tale, so is life. What matters is not how long it is, but how good." And perhaps that is the secret of the Stoic life: to live not for applause or recognition, but to live in such a way that even your silence teaches something to those who come after you. You will fade, I will fade, but the virtue we build, the wisdom we share, the calm we protect, these are eternal. They are the quiet constellations that guide every generation home. In the end, silence is not the absence of life. It is life's purest form. It is eternity, breathing through you. And so the echo continues, in stillness, in kindness, in every heart that dares to live with calm. Epictetus, what is death? Nothing more than the separation of soul and body. Seneca, as is a tale, so is life. What matters is not how long it is, but how good.